We are now in the news for the right reasons. I don't have any doubt that our democracy is alive, is vibrant, and we can be an example.
Here we have a very special guest from the University of Botswana, none other than Professor Emmanuel Botlhale. So, Dumela Prof. I have not met anybody who expected what came out of the Botswana elections last week.
See, there were no indicators. We had no clue, no indication. So it was like ninja style. It was so stealth. We need to understand the signs of voter behavior in this country. I mean, after the elections, we need to sit down and say, let's understand how Batswana voted.
What were the issues that you think led to the results that we just got?
You see, voters can punish you. The economy does not talk about ideology. It doesn't talk about party affiliation. But when it comes to the stomach doesn't care about ideology or affiliation. I'm hungry. And I feel that, party X is giving me stones. And you come around and you tell me, I'll give you bread. As a rational voter, what do you think I would? It is one thing to talk about politicking, electioneering, sloganeering, all of these things. But then, of course, beyond that, we now need to get into the serious business of now governing the country. What alarms me, what worries me, is that you can't promise that you'll do this thing overnight.
Welcome to the Growth Well podcast, where we tap into a well of knowledge, innovation, and leadership to fuel Africa's growth. Here, we explore thought-provoking insights and expert knowledge that empower individuals and businesses to thrive across the continent. Whether it's personal development or professional advancement, our conversations inspire action and impact. This is Growth Well, where ideas flow and growth begins. Let's dive in.
Hi everyone, Dumela Mbagaitso. We are back. This is Growth Well podcast. And today, very special topic. Mogala Makapa. You know what happened last week is just amazing. I think the country is still in shock. But today we are reflecting on those elections. What do they mean for Botswana? What do they mean even for Africa? So today I have a very special guest, which I will introduce in a minute. But some of the ways that I've seen in the public domain or in the media, where it's like a shock, a new dawn, excitement, landslide. Importantly, there was one from a South African radio station which said, what's happening Batswana? You know, the South African, it's like, hey, we never thought Batswana can do this. Just silently, almost insidiously change government. So it's been quite an interesting past week. And today we have a very special guest from the University of Botswana, none other than Professor Emmanuel Botlhale. And yes, the good thing about this is the first professor to come on our podcast. So, Dumela Prof.
Dumela. You're enough.
I'm looking forward to this. Right. As you know, this has been quite almost earth-shattering in terms of the impact on the nation and everybody else. But before we start, Prof, I'd just like to start with on a light moment. We just start with a bit of fun moment. And I'll start. On my side, one of the things that I do just for growth and well-being is this process of fasting. You know, so what I do is used to have this 3 days a meal type thing. So what I do now, I only have 2 meals a day. And there's a tremendous impact on my vibrancy, my energy, by reducing the amount of food that I take. As you know, Babuaka, how we should reduce starch intake, we should reduce sugar intake. So I've been a couple of years now doing that. And my first meal is at 11 o'clock. Yeah, it's 11 o'clock. And then I only have supper around 6 o'clock with the family. So that has now happened for a few years, and that has really kept my weight on top notch. And importantly, it gives you energy for some reason. I mean, the experts and the scientists can describe it, but it's just one of the amazing things because obesity, as you know, and other things are things that reduce they work on obviously weight problems and also in terms of diseases like type 2 diabetes and blood pressure, all those things that touch us here in Africa. So that's just something I wanted to share. If you can, please do reduce the amount of food, especially sugar-based foods, starch, and so on. You'll have a bit more energy than everybody else. So I don't know, on your side, anything you want to share on the light side in terms of what you do to keep your energy as a professor with all those students and everything.
Yeah, thank you. I like your light moment, except that when you're talking about cutting down meat and everything, I remember at one time when I was in the United States, New York, as a student, I used to have logs, and one guy asked me, "Are you a vegetarian?" I said, "Yes, I'm a vegetarian. However, I'm only one if there's no meat." Otherwise, I'm not a vegetarian.
And it's because meat is very expensive there, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
And it doesn't taste as well
Of course,
isn't it? A lot of GMO.
Good. Yeah. No, but otherwise, as you've said, my day job, of course, it's I'm a professor at the University of Botswana. Typically, I'm awake between 6 and 12 midnight. But obviously, I mean, that means I only have about 6 hours to sleep.
Wow.
It's a busy schedule for me.
It is.
But I do gym.
Okay, wonderful.
I do gym. I have a small mini gym in my
gym
house.
in your house,
just to keep me busy. And of course, besides that, I also do farming. You know, I'm just a small farmer in an area called Spapanana, Mwagisi West.
Spapanana, yeah, that's Spapanana.
Thank you. That will be just around Bitisangwe area.
Okay.
20 kilometers before Joining.
Okay.
So actually, that's where I usually go to relax. And I've realized that actually, once I'm there at the farm, I really have my creative juices flowing. In fact, I've written some of my best papers right at the farm, surrounded by my cows. Yeah. You know, I'm just there at one with nature. So I really enjoy just being out there. So, I mean, I'm able to merge, farm life and the city. Then, of course, I go to Kanye in the village, spend a bit of time there. But otherwise, I generally have a very busy life. Of course, I'm a very private person, even though I live in the public eye.
Yeah,
but
like
I'm
this.
a very, very private person.
Yeah. So when you are peaceful in nature there, you are one with everything just flows.
Exactly. The air is cleaner. It's quiet. It's just me and my laptop or my iPad. And I'm just communicating with nature. Wonderful. I'm really at one with nature. Wonderful. I mean, that's really, it's more like a getaway for me. So once I'm out there, I'm really okay. But of course, I got to come back to the village in Kanye and then come to the city. But otherwise, so it's basically the farm, village, and then city.
So, three lives.
Yeah, wonderful. So it's a very good combination, I believe.
Right. And a very inexpensive one. It's not very costly. You don't have to go to some beach and stuff like that. That's far away.
Yeah. One could just say so.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Prof. Let's get on the career side, on the professional side. What do you do? People always wonder, what can do these professors? What do you do? And in terms of just your credentials, your travels, I know that you are a regular commentator on issues of politics, which is very much the subject of the day, public administration and that type of thing. Just tell the viewer in terms of your background from a career perspective. Yeah,
all right, thanks. Of course, when I finished university, I worked for government for 4 years. I think it was good for me to experience life outside the academia, just to get a sense of what really happens out there. Yeah, and then I came back after 4 years, joined the university as an SDF, that's a staff development fellow. And then, of course, I had to go to school. I went to New York for my master's. I came back, and then later on, I went back to the US. But this time around, I went to Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
For my PhD.
For a PhD, yeah.
Then I came back to university now to get into the business of doing what the university hired me to do. Yeah. So typically, a professor is a teacher. I mean, a professor is just a title that you get, that you earn, of course, amongst others through publications.
Yeah.
But what I do 3 things. Principally, is teaching. I mean, of course, as a professor, essentially you are a teacher. So that is really my core business. So I teach at all levels. Undergrad, masters, and PhD.
Okay.
Yeah, and then secondly, it has to do with research and publication. I mean, you need to demonstrate the scholarship through research and publication.
Okay.
So that is one of the things that I do.
That will keep,
Yeah, and then 3 is about service. I mean, you do service at many levels. I mean, it could be service, to the university. that's university-wide, would be service to the faculty, would be service to the department. So that is just within UB.
Okay.
And then it could also be service to the profession, where amongst others, you belong to different professional organizations.
Yeah.
And then lastly, and very importantly, you do service to the community. We need to give back. You don't just want to be a UB professor.
Yeah.
You also need to be a public professor. I need to give back. So if I say I appear on public TV or radio or private radio, or I do a commentary on newspapers and stuff like that, I'm really doing my community service. I advise VDCs, in the village in Kanyede.
Okay.
I'm also working with farmers committees.
Wow.
All of these things, I'm serving the community.
Yeah.
So in totality, you do three things. Teaching, which is, you find that typically 40% of what you do
is teaching.
Just teaching.
In the classroom.
And then say 20%, would go say to research and publication, and the rest goes to service. But in fact, when you get assessed as a professor, they do a 360 degree evaluation. What I do for teaching, show us the evidence. What I do in terms of research and publications, show us the evidence. What do you do in terms of research? And you've done that, isn't it? And then service. So it means you look at these three areas, and then you get a sense of, if you do that evaluation, you should be able to tick all these three boxes.
Okay.
So that is basically what I do. Though, of course, people tend to think that we only teach.
Yeah, that's just teachers.
No, it's just more than teaching.
The professor is just, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's more than that.
And then I like the altruism part, the service part. And you say you get assessed on that as well in terms of your contributions.
Exactly.
That's something that perhaps a lot of viewers wouldn't know that you do that. No, excellent.
Naturally, when you do your annual appraisal, like for the PMS, so you need to show these three areas, teaching, research publication, and then service. Even when you apply for promotion, of course, I'm at a point whereby I can't apply for any promotion because I've reached the ceiling. But when I was applying, say, for promotion from lecturer to senior lecturer, from senior lecturer to associate professor, from associate professor to full professor, I had to demonstrate these three areas that, yes, I'm able to show evidence that I've done my teaching, I've done my research and publications, I've done my service. So that is basically, even though I've reached the ceiling, I still get assessed on an annual basis through the PMS tool. So I have to demonstrate these three areas of performance. Right.
I'm going to challenge you, Prof, because I've also challenged other academics to say, I don't know whether it's a Botswana or an African thing, where a lot of stuff you do out there. I know that you do publications on newspapers and times that you appear on radio stations, but there's still a gap in terms of what people know. People tend to go with the sort of the tabloid mentality and not. This is one of the things that we've received lots of feedback around Growth Well podcast, where people saying we're providing a lot of data, a lot of insights, which people are not aware of. So what would you say around that? Are you guys maybe a bit aloof and not really?
Yes. I thought you used this phrase, the ivory tower.
Ivory tower, yes. Maybe that's a better way. That's a better way, yes.
No, right. They always talk about the city gown divide. Okay. The city, that is people out there. And then the gown, that's the academia.
Okay, yes.
So,
the Buddha.
Yes. A city gown divide.
I got it.
They always say that there is a divide between the city and the gown. And then they would accuse us of sitting on the ivory tower, such that we are so disconnected from what is happening on the ground.
100%. Yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, there is this accusation, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. Let me say, guilty as charged as a member of the academia. So what it means is that I think we should be challenged, in the academia, to say that we do research and do all other things, but then the most important thing is how we communicate, this research to the populace out there. So meaning that one of the things that we need to really work on is how we communicate, whatever we are doing to the community out there. As an example, we talk about evidence-based policy making. So how do you, bridge that gap between science, that is research, academics on the one hand, and policymakers on the other. So you find that these two constitutions are not talking to one another. And then at the same time, you find that in the academia, there's certain language that we use, but we need to break it down so that we can communicate with the populace out there. So meaning that, of course, there's a lot that we need to do so that we can essentially work around this city-gown divide. No, it's a challenge, and I think we as academics, we can do a better job of communicating so that we are not seen as being perched up there on the ivory tower. We are so disconnected to what is that. That's why, I was saying to you that I always want to think of myself as a public professor, not so much of, a UB professor, somebody who's just in the office, I just do my thing.
There,
So that's why, I'm able to transcend that city-gown divide where I can, for instance, go to public TV to talk about the budget speech in Botswana. Remember, this is in English, but I got to break it down to Botswana. I go to, let's say, Masasi in the morning, talk about this, some of these things. So for me, I believe that, yes, I think we should make sure that we don't just become just UB academics or professors. So we need to really communicate so that we kill this city-gown divide that I talked about.
No, wonderful. I'm glad we agree.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, Prof, to the topic at hand. Nara, I was, during elections, obviously we had a holiday.
Right.
So we were all sitting and, very eager to know how the pattern that was, listening to the usual Mutlanyana Wadi Topo songs and the results on to the Thursday. And I have not met anybody who expected what came out of the Botswana elections last week. Although some say, I was listening to President Duma himself, where he said, yes, he expected to make huge grounds. But the words he used, he didn't expect the intensity. The intensity of the numbers and the turnout and the win that they achieved. So I just wonder when this happened, how did you take it? How did it as it unfolded? What was happening with you as a commentator and an analyst?
Yeah, thank you for this question. I'm still processing. From where I'm sitting right now, I'm still processing what happened. Certainly, yes, I respect the fact that Batswana, made that call. They made a decision, and you might be familiar with this Latin phrase says, "Vox populi, vox Dei." A voice of the people is the voice of God.
The voice of God.
So they've spoken. We need to listen to the voice. But of course, pre-election, like any other analyst, I had my own ideas, predictions about what would happen. But of course, remember, prediction is not science. It's art. You would recall that in 2016, the poll gave it to Hillary. 2016 in America.
Yes, the elections.
Yes. And then we all know what happened, at least during Trump 1.0. Right? And then, of course, as we speak right now,
2.0.
So the polls, had him at 47 and Camilla at 48. But as I was coming here, I was looking at the map. I saw the red, the red font and just a little patch of there and there of blue. So what I'm saying is that prediction is just prediction. You are just using an estimate based on what you know. And then you can make those. And of course, if it doesn't go the way you predicted, you don't have to beat yourself down to say I failed. It's like a budget. You can forecast a budget deficit.
From a financial point of view.
You get a surplus. And then, on the other hand, you can forecast a surplus. You get a deficit. But it doesn't mean that you are a bad forecaster. It just simply means that with what you had at the time, that was the best estimate you could make around the budget. So coming back to this one, yes, we had our own predictions, but certainly our predictions were not aligned with the outcome that we saw. And of course, some people will say it's a shock, all of these things. And particularly because pre-election, so you see, there were no indicators. Nothing was saying, at least screaming loudly to say there will be this systemic change or all of these things. So when it finally happened, then I'm like, okay. But at the end of the day, we have to respect what people have decided, and we got to live with that. Right.
And it brings a question of voter behavior. You know, we are very used. I mean, you and I have lived through President Khama, we've lived through Ramasire, Mogae, and so forth. So Botswana's politics had almost been predictable. And part of it, I've always said that sometimes people, they go or vote for a party like as if it's their club, you know, like, you know, naka support the extension Ghana Sukolobatse, and then ka support the Ghana Sukumahatsing. You know, Haiji wants I support.
Right, yes.
So people just, you know, sometimes they don't care. They just go with I know that we've discussed that there are different behavioral models. Now, I just wanted to talk to the Botswana one. How would you unpack it in terms of different voter behavior and the models that would perhaps explain what happened this time around?
Yeah, I think, you know, a human being is a very complex animal. Of course, I'm saying animal in a respective.
No, I'm with you.
Yes, thank you. So what I'm saying is that it's so difficult to predict human behavior. Of course, when we model, you know, human behavior, we principally want, at least if you go by classical, you know, economic theory, what they would simply tell you is that you want to think of a voter as a rational human being, meaning that this is somebody who is going to be deliberate, you know, about what they do. They are going to make some calculations. They are going to do CBA, cost benefit analysis.
Yeah,
and then only they say, what are the net benefits? So when it comes to voting, to me, voting, you know, is an investment good. You know, so it's not so much consumption, because in the sense that you see, when you cast a vote, you are investing, and obviously you expect a return on investment.
Yeah.
That's what we do. So we typically would want to start from a point where we are saying we are thinking about a rational vote, right? That is, in an ideal world, that is what you want to think about, you know, your vote. But of course, you see, in the real world, people tend to be irrationally rational.
Irrationally rational.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see, I mean, when it's ideal, we can talk about somebody being rationally rational. But in the real world, we find that people who tend to be irrationally rational. It might sound more like an oxymoron. How could you be irrationally rational? What it means is that when you make those rational decisions, a lot of things are key. One is about knowledge. Do you have full knowledge about this decision problem that is facing you?
Yes.
Of course, it could be time. Yeah, but of course, I think time is not a problem, because in any case, you have to make that decision in the both, isn't it? Yeah, and then I think, let me just talk about knowledge. I mean, do you know, what is facing you? I mean, do you have everything? Because, you know, sometimes people can talk about asymmetry of information. You know, I know something that you don't know, but I expect you to make a decision in respect of me. So then, how do you now make that choice? So, yes, of course, in an ideal situation, you would expect, you know, rational voting behavior. But of course, in real life, because things are never really ideal, there are a lot of factors that come into the play, or into the calculus. You find that it could just be that it's about history. You know, I've always known this. I've known X. So I'm not really going to experiment with Y or Z. It's one of these things. Sometimes it's about brand loyalty. I'm just loyal to a brand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A color.
Yeah, that's right. So all of these things. So, you're going to be difficult for you to dislodge me, you know, from that brand. You know, all of these things. Or some, it could be expectations about the future, you know, prospective voting behavior, where somebody says, you know what, I don't know the X, but I'm going to take my chance because I think X would enhance my prospects going into the future.
Going forward. Yeah.
So you see, there are so many of these behaviors that you see. So at the end of the day, you can't drill it to any one voting behavior. So it's a mix of.
But what has been the Botswana's dominate one? Yeah, Batswana tota, from your assessment.
Okay, we go back from. Okay, remember the story didn't begin in 1966. It began in March 1965 when we are preparing for self-rule. Yeah, that is when you had your Bechuanaland Democratic Party, Bechuanaland People's Party, and all of those things, right? So I'm just saying that the story begins in 1965 or 66. That's when you got full independence. But before independence, we had elections, the first ones. Yeah. So constantly that has been happening. I mean, for almost 60 years, we've had one party. So basically, what has happened is that you found that it was really, at least on average, more like brand loyalty, just people being loyal to a particular brand. And remember that once you are tied to a certain brand, and then I bring another brand, you are not likely to easily switch from that.
Becomes
brand.
awkward, yeah.
Yeah, so those kind of things. So, and of course, the incumbency factor too, because you see, though of course, subsequently we can talk about the incumbency to say that we've seen what happened with the ANC, we saw what happened in Zambia, we saw what happened in Malawi. So you always want to ask, I mean, do we see a shift away from the so-called liberation movements, liberation parties, the incumbent parties, or incumbentism? Some talk about incumbentism, because where they're saying you have been there. So people kind of like tend to, not move away from that. So to me, there's a lot that political scientists need to tell us. I'm not a political scientist. I have a common sense approach to these things. So my sense is that we need to understand the science of voter behavior in this country. So meaning that after the storm is over, the euphoria is over. I mean, after the elections, we need to sit down and say, let's do research. Let's understand how Batswana voted. It's very unfortunate that we don't do polling before elections.
Yes, that's something I wanted to ask you, Horo. Where are all the, I mean, it doesn't have to be the government system, but just polling to find indications and patterns and...
Though, of course, like I said, polling is not necessarily scientific, but at least it'll give you an indicator.
Correct.
Even during, I was just watching, I'm just watching the American election right now. Yeah. So, and you see, they do exit polls. After people have voted, they are polling them so that they can have an indication as to where it's going. So my sense is that going forward, it doesn't have to be government, NGOs or any other research institutes should be thinking about polling before the elections and exit polling so that at least we have a sense of what happened. Because, you see, because we didn't necessarily get to understand what people were thinking, and since we didn't poll them or survey their opinions.
Yes, there's no baseline to draw from.
We are acting shocked to say, how did they vote this way? Because we had no clue. No indication. So it was like ninja style. It was so stealth. People just went in there, voted.
We got hit.
And then all of a sudden, you see this, you're like, what's happened? So I think it is challenging us to say we need to be scientific about these things. We can't be accurate about it.
But at least you got to start. You got to start
somewhere.
Exactly. I mean, on a lighter moment, it just reminds me when you talk about voter behavior. I think it was before the 1990 elections. I went with one of my friends to their village. He wanted to check on his grandmother. Right. Farms. So when you got there, obviously the whole winds of elections were all over, and the old lady was asking us, we sort of we had UB at the time, and we're like, no, Haritzi, but BDP is just going to win. And guess what he said? There was she told her, she says, Banaka, have you seen a picture? I don't know if you know that thing.
Yes.
If you look at that picture, how do we vote for someone?
Oh, no. Okay.
So for me, I was like, whoa, damn, this is going to be very difficult for opposition parties to find that.
Okay.
But this is voter behavior, isn't it?
Right.
In a classical sense, where even some nuances can influence someone to say, just the fact that almost in being so come, but I roll and also come.
Yeah, I hear.
Yeah.
No, because like I'm saying, voter behavior it's a very difficult thing to understand. But at least we should make an effort to understand why people vote. Because I mean, a photo, like you are saying, is just potent enough to sway somebody.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm just saying. But it says, supposing now it was, let's say, another picture which he or she would have liked at the time. You can imagine that picture itself would have made them vote the other way. So I mean, small things. I mean, you never know what sways the mind of a voter. I mean, it's difficult size, but not that it cannot be done. But we should just be aware that it's so difficult because you might think people are thinking this way, and then when they go into the booth, they will think or cast their vote the other way. So you never know.
Yeah.
Right.
Prof, the next one is to look at the historical perspective on the elections. And I, as an entrepreneur, we like history because history gives patterns.
Right.
What will happen that we can exploit as entrepreneurs. So I was just thinking, going through this, Ebekere, is it easy to even look at pre-independence, from the three chiefs to the Kama story, to independence? Is there a pattern that one? And I like this because I would like the viewers to appreciate the insights that, in terms of maturity of our democratic process. There's always talk about is our democracy mature enough? And I was listening to when the President Boko was doing a press conference with the just immediate past President Masisi.
Right.
Get used to this.
Right. Yes.
And so he was saying the elections demonstrated that democracy in Botswana is unshaken. If there's anybody who wanted to doubt it, this is it.
Right.
So my question is it really? Is it true? Is it is it sealing the pattern that has come through the years? I don't know what your take is on that.
Yeah, no, thank you. You see, democracy, of course, it means so many things to different people.
Yeah.
Of course, pre-independence, democracy is not new to us. We have had democracy. What is new to us, is really what we would call electoral democracy, where we have to go vote and stuff like that. And like I was saying, the story begins in March 1965. So obviously, if you look back, Botswana, of course, is one of the longest and stablest democracies in the region. At one point, we are called the shining example and all of these things. So I think we deserve that label. I don't think it was a fluke.
Okay.
So, but of course, when democracy matures or consolidates, it means they should be change of power, change of government. They talk about circulation of elites. Elites must circulate.
Must circulate, yeah.
So what it basically means is that, from when we started from 65, we have had, peaceful elections. We don't have any drama that attaches to elections and stuff like that. And of course, though political scientists, when they define multi-party democracy, they mean that no one party can continually rule.
Yeah.
That's what they will say.
That's why Botswana has been labeled a one-party state in some quarters.
Or
for so many years. Dominant
party system. Yeah, so basically means that if you now break this hold on a dominant party system, it means this democracy is now maturing, is consolidating. And we are now essentially rightfully ending the moniker or the label of multi-party democracy. Right.
Wow.
So to me, and not only that, look at how this transition happened. The magical number is 31. By the time UDC hit 31, the CJ immediately announced that we have a government, in waiting. We do have a president-elect. And within 2 hours, the president was sworn in. You saw the office handover. And we are now looking to Friday with inauguration and everything. So everything just smooth and quick. And not only that, CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera. I was on France 24 on Friday night. Just talking about these things. I was on Namibian Broadcasting Corporation Monday morning, 6:30, talking about this thing. So what is happening? We are now in the news for the right
things.
Reasons.
Yeah.
So I don't have any doubt that our democracy is alive, is vibrant, and not only that, we can be an example. We can give lessons not only to the so-called developing democracies. I think, and I'm brave to say that we can give lessons to the so-called developed democracies.
Really?
Yes.
Just give us one example without dwelling too much on it. Why would you? What motivates you to say that as an example? We're witnessing the Trump versus Harris elections right now, and we've got the UK elections or the Labour and Tory. How would you think we stick out a little bit compared to these developed?
Okay, now that you're talking about history, 2000, I was a student in America, in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then of course, the election happened. I was there. And if you follow that election, it was during Gore and Bush.
Mm.
Yeah, and the Florida issue, hanging ballots and everything.
I remember that.
And then what happened was that they even had to go to the Supreme Court to decide on that election. You know what these guys were even saying? That no, now America, it's like we are in a third world country. then I'm like, no. But you see, what is this thing called third world country? Because for ours, we don't necessarily have to go to court and determine, the outcome of an election. You know what I'm saying? So to me, of course, the mainstream media was talking about why should you go to court and everything. This like a third world country. Of course, that was really, to me, so condescending. I mean, whatever is called a third world country.
Yeah.
So for me, I mean, the maturity that we just demonstrated just shows us, or at least the world, that people can pick a few lessons from us. Get me right. I'm not saying our electoral system is perfect.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
But I'm saying on the whole, I mean, on the balance of probabilities, you can say that this is a system that people can learn from us. And of course, I would expect that going forward, there will be reforms around, the system. Like, for instance, are we still okay with first past the post, as an example? I mean, how do we ensure gender balance? One of the things that first past the post, as an example, doesn't do well in terms of gender representation. But with the PR as an example, you find that male, female, like, you have your list, isn't it? Male, female.
You
male,
are able to influence,
all of these things. So I'm just saying that I'm not saying our system is perfect, but on the balance of probabilities, there are good lessons that we can give, not only to the so-called, remember I'm saying so-called developing
I'm with you.
democracies, even the so-called developed democracies. Thank you.
No, 100%. And I have to say, the whole smooth sailing has been very heartwarming. And I've never seen Batswana so proud of their democratic credentials in terms of what happened.
Yeah.
Now, the next question, in terms of the voting, let's dissect what were the issues that you think led to the results that we just got. So in terms of, we have the UDC manifesto, we have the BDP manifesto, we have the BCP manifesto and others. What do you think in the end tipped, in terms of the issues that when the voter cast that vote, it says, is it a job? Is it because agriculture is going down? What were those issues? Just the high level ones, the key ones.
Yeah, thank you. Of course, where we sit, we don't have the benefit of, research, any surveys to really say what influenced, the voting choice that we saw. But of course, we can really try to conjecture into this thing, try to infer into what happened. But before we answer that one, it's always very interesting to figure out, are we talking about issue-based politics here, or any other politics, or maybe the voting? Do people vote based on issues that they see? Or is it about a brand? Or is it about loyalty? Or is it about future expectations of Botlhale's party, as an example? So, yes, like I was saying, that you can't pin it down to any one thing. It could be brand, could be loyalty, could be incumbency, it could be expectations. It could also be about issues, particularly the economy. Because one of the things that people obviously have to worry about is their lives and livelihoods. To say that parties are canvassing for votes. Who is going to impact my life and livelihood, in a maximal way? So to me, I'm also a voter. What it means is that my sense would be that the economy becomes very key. It is no secret that we do have a depressed economy as we speak. One would understand that the last 2 quarters we had negative growth, and of course in economics, if you post 2 negative growths, in 2 successive quarters, you are talking a recession. We don't have to wait for anybody to tell us that we're in a recession. We do know because just from the statistics we can tell that here is what we are.
Who's supposed to declare that we are in a recession? I've just been listening to experts, everybody, Keith, we've discussed it, we are in a recession, but the system is not telling us that we are in a recession. I mean, in the UK, everywhere, even the Prime Minister will say, the nation is in a recession and need to tighten up the belt and all that.
Of course, in the US, you always want to hear what the chair is saying. The Federal Reserve chair is going to say. But obviously, you expect the central bank to really lead in this so that we know. But anyways, that's besides the point. So what I'm saying is that, of course, it's a depressed economy. We have seen the numbers, we've seen the stats, and we know the position with the government investment account. We know all of these things. And issues around poverty. I mean, yes, you can talk about poverty being as high as 50% at independence, now hovering at 23%. Yeah, that's what they're saying. So, fine. But still, but then, of course, when you say poverty, what poverty are you talking about? Because when you are now talking about multi-dimensional poverty, it's almost 50%. Now, when you talk of just poverty, not in a multi-dimensional sense, it will be just about 23. But when you talk multi-dimensional poverty, we are talking almost half of the population being multi-dimensionally poor, right? Unemployment is a big one.
Can you define the multi-dimensional? I mean, we usually talk about in the World Bank and all that, they talk about the $1 per day type. How do you, where does it fit in terms of your multi?
Yeah, because in most instances, when people talk about poverty, they are talking about income poverty. That if you live on less than $1, $1.25, so they're saying you are living below the bread line or the poverty data line or something like that. But you see, when it says multi-dimensional, it means you now need to look at poverty, just beyond income, even voice. Voice is poverty. Lack of voice is poverty. If you don't have voice, if there's no space for you to express your voice as the populace, that's poverty. So when we measure poverty, we measure it in all these different dimensions. So that if you want to talk about poverty, you need to talk about multi-dimensional poverty. Go beyond the monetary or income poverty. That's what it means. Yeah, of course, unemployment, we do know, particularly among the youth. I mean, I'm a professor at the university. I graduate students year in, year out. I ask myself, after graduation, where are they going? What are they going to do? So all of these things. So, all of these things, to me, the economy is very important. You can talk about everything. Talk about history. Bush Sr., he was a one-term president, and then Clinton took over. Everything was okay. They went to Gulf, the first Gulf, and everything. The Americans were happy. Everything was happy. But then something just happened. Just toward the end of his term, there was a recession. And just that recession was enough for these guys to forget about everything. The
good things that he has done.
Yeah, and then that is how he lost an election. I'm not saying he's the only one. I'm just giving an example to say that, you see, voters can punish you, in the both, just because of the economy. But it will make sense because the economy does not talk about ideology. It doesn't talk about party affiliation. I could be a member of party X, party Y, or party Z. But when it comes to the stomach doesn't care about ideology or affiliation. I'm hungry. And I feel that party X is giving me stones. And you come around and you tell me, I'll give you bread. As a rational voter, what do you think I would do? I'm going to choose bread over stones. So to me, there could be many things, but I can drill it to the economy.
The economy.
And then, of course, the economy, you need to add things like unemployment, particularly among the youth. And remember, too, that this time around, even though, historically we have had voter apathy, particularly pronounced among the youth, this time around...
The turnout.
the turnout was big. And in America, they would say the youth rocked the vote. They rocked it. They did.
Yeah.
And obviously, once they rocked that vote, remember, a vote is an investment good. It's not a consumption good. So you are investing. So then you need to get your return.
The expectations are high.
Of course.
Yeah.
And like I'm saying, people are invested in this. You know, it is one thing to talk about politicking, electioneering, sloganeering, all of these things. You can get the hype out of that. And but then of course, beyond that, we now need to get into the serious business of now governing the country, running the economy. That's when now we forget about the euphoria and now start saying, where is my return on investment?
Absolutely. Before you go to that, when we're looking at the voter issues,
yes,
do you think the element, and this is quite dear to me, because the day corruption starts sipping into the system and becomes quite domineering, it really corrodes the system. It corrodes the country. All the good things and also it becomes a culture. And I wanted to just ask you, Jorge, do you believe that there is, I'm picking this up also from the statistics, from, I think even more Ibrahim, they talked about how Botswana is dropping in terms of governance and others as well. Do you think that also was quite a phenomenal issue around the elections? And it's because, like you said, we have a history of a democratic dispensation of liberty, of freedom that we need to protect. As you said, without the voice, it can also be, defined as in poverty.
Yes.
So I just wanted to, do you think that issue, and you can also relate it to the strong man. Sometimes in Africa, we develop the strong man mentality that dominate and believe that they have all the answers. And sometimes it leads to that corruption type thing in terms of dominating the system. Do you think perception around corruption could have been a factor as well?
Yeah, thank you. In some books in literature, they talk about corruption as the cancer of Africa. You see cancer eats away, the body. You can imagine how corrosive cancer can be. Yes. No, so what it basically means is that, yes, you can look at Transparency International, the surveys that they do annually. They talk about perception of corruption.
Yeah.
So, going back, we were at one point the least corrupt. They didn't say we were corrupt-free. Least corrupt. Meaning that there is corruption.
There's corruption. Like every country, there is some level.
Yes. So we are the least corrupt, and then number 2, number 3, and then we are sliding. And then you look at the Mo Ibrahim index of governance. We used to be very good. Remember, even President Mohai, former President, I'm given an award for that. For having led, this country, the governance was good. But of course, yes, I can also now bring it home. Afrobarometer studies, we have had those, and they also show that there are concerns around corruption. In fact, in their studies, year in, year out, it has been shown for the past 3-4 years that corruption has always been a concern amongst voters, and that people are concerned about it. And obviously, they are asking, is the government doing enough, to combat corruption? Of course, you can't reduce it to zero, but you need to really work around it. Yes, it has been it's been an issue, and it'll be very interesting when we do this post-election surveys to ask,
to ascertain,
to say, was corruption a factor? Did you have corruption in your mind as we're casting that vote? And then you were talking about corruption and institutions. One of the things that corruption does is to weaken institutions. Obama came to Ghana, Accra. That was September 2009. He addressed the Ghanaian parliament, and he unforgettably said, Africa does not need strong men. And by men, of course, he meant men and women. It needs strong institutions. Right.
Wonderful.
And then Mandela also talked about a deficit of governance in Africa. So I'm just bringing these two sons of Africa. I'm saying Obama is our son. So then
we have to own him up.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So basically, what it means is that yes, we do have the strong men syndrome in Africa. Strong men as men and women.
Yeah.
That is key. And then what happens is that you end up having now to grow strong men and strong women, and at the same time killing institutions.
Correct.
We don't need Obama to tell us that we don't need strong men, we need strong institutions. So meaning that one of the things that we need also to ask post-elections is to say, what is the role of institutions, in this democracy? Do you see our institutions weak or strong? Because in any case, you can't have a vibrant, robust democracy if you've got weak institutions. In fact, if you want to kill democracy, in Africa particularly,
start
just kill institutions and go strong men and strong women. That's the death of democracy.
Yeah.
So it's a question that we need to ask to say, what are your thoughts around institutions and how important or central they are to a democracy?
Yeah.
Right.
You've quoted our African sons, but let's maybe go to the heart of one of the, obviously, countries that we've learned a lot in terms of democracy. There was a gentleman that I really like reading about, Lord Acton. Lord Acton, the one who power corrupts, absolute.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the things that he said, Lord Acton, this is the late 19th century. He said, it takes a long time for freedom to be rooted in institutions. And even then, it is prey to subversion and corruption. And then he went on to say, freedom is a delicate fruit of mature civilization. It needs nurturing. We need to nurture it. And lastly, history of liberty is the history of deliverance of man from power of man. Deliverance of man from the power of man. That's why I'm mentioning the strong man thing. That could start corroding when we start. And I think as Africans, we are very vulnerable to almost cult following.
Right.
And then we rally around a person. And we have a history of very strong institutions, I think, as you know, from the public service. But there's, again, perception that has been eroding a bit. So I think a very, very, very good point there around maybe we need to do a survey and actually ascertain what the voter thought.
Right.
Yeah. Great. Now, one of your favorite topics, the economy. And again, I think you've already mentioned that it could have, I'm sure it did in terms of contributing to the voter decision. You talked about the GIA, deficits are dominating. IMF, did a report in July, which is quite damning. The thing that really worries me is when they say that they are predicting 4%, assuming the diamonds come back in terms of sales next year, which, has been quite a disastrous year in terms of diamond sales. And they now qualify that it really, really depends if the diamonds come back. So there's still a big question mark whether this 4% for next year will happen. But I think based on you said, your take is that it could be. But what I wanted to focus on, because we mentioned the impact on elections, is again, let's look at the trajectory of Botswana. And I know you contributed. I've looked at some of your publications.
Right.
One of them is to look at the influence of leadership to economic growth or economic development.
Yes.
So, and in that paper, you guys were talking about, we're trying to relate the late President Masire's influence in terms of the development state from 1965 all the way. I mean, this is the time when we achieved one of the best growth rates in the world. I mean, I understand by 71, we're achieving 26% GDP growth.
We are the highest in the world. Not in Africa, in the world.
In the world.
Yes.
And if you summarize the 45 years from 65 to 2005, for 45 years, that's 17%. So I just wanted for you to sort of reflect for us, Jorge, with the development state, or sometimes you guys say development statism philosophy, where obviously there was nothing. The state had to, and I'm saying this because the UDC government and the chairman or the director of policy for UDC they did a press conference yesterday.
Yes.
He was emphasizing that at the heart of the UDC manifesto is the aspect of the development state, whereby they will be developing mega enterprises. So what really, I just wanted to say, are we losing part of the question, the first one, are we losing that trajectory that our forefathers the Seretes in terms of fiscal conservatism, development state, which was relevant up to getting all these nice and management of resources properly. And now we are in a different phase of now, UDC comes in and say they're almost going back to the development statism that characterized the origination of the First Republic. So I just wanted your reflections on that.
Yeah, thank you. And actually, I've written quite a bit on the open state in Botswana. So the question is, let's call the DS.
The DS,
Yes.
development state.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just for short, just to conserve my breath. Now, so thank you. So now, I think the question you're asking is the DS dead?
Yeah.
Or rather, do we see the comeback of the
Yes,
DS,
of the DS.
Of DS.
Yes. Did it play the role? Is it still relevant today?
Yes.
And now reconcile with the fact that it's UDC now is their philosophy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
No, actually, before I answer that one and go back to what happened from 65, what is happening is that I see Nixon, the former US president, he said all of us are Keynesians. Keynes, 36, his seminal book. He talked about managing demand. He was saying we need to really work on the demand side of the economy. Let's have the government spending money into the economy to stimulate it, particularly when there's a recession. So
that's a John Keynes philosophy, isn't it? In the 1930s.
From his classical book, 1936.
That's correct. Yeah.
So and then in 1970, then Nixon was saying all of us are Keynesians. No, he just meant that. We might say we are a neoliberal economy and
all that, free market, but in the end,
we are all Keynesians.
Yeah.
So back to Botswana. Of course, 65 with the self-rule. I always start with 65. I don't start with 66. Yes.
Why? Because that's when it started officially. We're obsessed with the 30th September 66 when independence, yes.
But you remember,
the self-rule started earlier.
Yeah, the first elections, March 65. We were preparing for full independence. But remember at that time, we had a prime minister.
Yes.
And then the deputy prime minister being Masiri.
Yes.
Our story began in March 65.
Thank you.
Not
Thank you.
66 September.
You. Now we are your students today as well.
No, thank you. So now, so what is happening here is that, of course, we are poor then. In fact, one of the poorest countries in the world. Not in Africa, in the world. So what it basically meant was that, we had to make choices. And, of course, the economy was agrarian-based. Agriculture was the mainstay. We are dependent on foreign aid. And then government, decided, without making any pronouncement, that we are going to establish a developmental state. There was no official document. You will never see it. But it was just implied. There was a consensus that we are going the DS way.
Okay.
Right. But obviously, at that time, we didn't have diamonds. So meaning that we had to scrape through with that DS project with basically nothing. Then, of course, 67, we discovered the first pipe, timberland pipe.
Yeah.
And then, of course, this now became, a game changer. But, of course, very important that, you see, the first finance minister was the late Masiri.
Yeah.
Was the first finance minister. This way, really, the framework was laid out. That is why, at that time, the VP by design was the finance minister. Of course, subsequently they combined finance and development planning.
Correct.
But then, of course, we are back to just finance separate and development planning separate. But anyways, so at that time, that is essentially how the foundation, was laid. And then we went through those phases of growth. It's like that. In the 80s, late 70s, 80s, now we are the fastest growing economy in the world, not in Africa. Of course, it was a combination of so many things. Diamonds alone could not graduate us from poor to middle income. Leadership is also one of the things that was critical. The piece that I did talked about Masiri's leadership. Of course, remember, I was talking about leadership. It was Masira, of course, with others. So that was the president.
Yes,
But of course, I was singling him out because he was the face of this DS project. Because he was the minister of finance
and development. Yes.
So, and then in the 80s, that is really now the high noon, of this project, where you're talking about the construction boom. For those who were alive in the 80s, like myself, I was young, but I remember
the roads and
the so-called construction boom. And then towards the 90s, you have a slowdown. And then we now go into the 2000s. And we know 07 through 09, we took a hit due to the global economic crisis and everything. 2014-15, we had the commodity crash. People don't talk about this. 2014-15, we had a commodity crash where prices of base metals, diamonds and others, it crashed. So that was another. So after 07-09, we had 2014-15, the crash. Then COVID, we know, and then we have to do, the ERTP, economic recovery, international plan, and all of these things. And here we are. So for me, the fundamentals, were laid down in 1965, March. So from where I'm sitting, I don't have any concerns. The fundamentals are in place. The superstructure is there. And I don't anticipate that even with the new government, there might be changes here and there, but the superstructure is not necessarily going to change. At least from where I'm sitting. So meaning that, there will be changes, but but in terms of the superstructure, that framework, at least the baseline is there. So they will work around that baseline. That's what I'm thinking of.
So the development state philosophy is still valid for Botswana now?
And the answer is yes.
The answer is yes.
And if you look at the UDC manifesto,
yes.
They are not apologetic about
it. No, they're very strong. It's actually the center of the...
Yes. Because they are now, they are trying to put the state at the forefront of the economy. So you still see the DS, right? At least you see a pronouncement around that. So it's just a question of how do we go about this project? This project has always been there. It's just that there will be a difference in terms of emphasis and how you want to do it. But the framework, the baseline, it's always been there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there is another one, again, around the economy, which, again, it's been a huge debate around government expenditure, especially if, towards the elections, there was a lot of opening of, all sorts of openings of infrastructure, with the development manager programs being announced all over. We are now going into a construction, as has been said by the past minister, Botswana is a construction site since March. Now, one of the things that has characterized the government of Ramasire and Rekama is fiscal conservatism. So one of my worries is that have we started departing where we know that, low taxes, careful expenditure, reducing debt, that discipline, do you think that discipline and that fiscal conservatism has served us, it needs to change, or is under risk, which might jeopardize the country's even potential recovery from this current downfall?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, when Masire was the Minister of Finance, he said that he didn't want to express our budget in terms of billions. He wanted to play it by millions so that it doesn't look like we've got a lot of money.
Yes, exactly that color, that culture. Yeah,
yes.
That culture.
So fiscal conservatism is basically what we had right from the beginning. But yes, of course, you now had the past government. And then you see what was being said was that, remember, post-2019 recovery means that we need to stimulate the economy.
Correct.
That's why you see that we are now Keynesian.
Keynesian politics.
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. So now I think what is important, of course, is just to strike a balance to say that don't spend what you don't have.
Yeah.
I mean, in February, they were forecasting 8 billion in terms of the budget deficit. That was February, during the budget speech.
Yeah.
But of course, with diamonds not selling and the physicals, being what it is, it means that we need to be cautious in terms of the E. There's the E, the expenditure, and there's the R, the revenue.
Revenue, yes.
So you always want to say that as government, don't spend that which you don't have. So meaning that from where I'm sitting, yes, I understand, the argument around post-COVID-19 recovery, that we need to stimulate the economy out of a recession.
Spend our way out of recession.
Yes. Yeah. I understand the Keynes in that argument.
Yes.
But at the same time, you need also to really talk about wisely spending. Because one of the things that the IMF also talked about is the efficiency of spending. You know you spend money, but do you have anything to show for it?
Yes.
Because you see, you talk about this logical framework: inputs, output, outcomes, and impact. So, you can spend money. Show me, you can show me the output. Maybe I can see a building. That's the output. Show me the outcome. Then show me the impact. So now, you see, we normally do a good job in terms of 2 out of 4. Inputs, we see brick and mortar. Output, you can see a bridge. And then what's the outcome? What's the impact on the economy? All of these things. So we need to ask. So for me, obviously, given what we have right now, we need to put the brakes on the
expenditure side.
Yeah, so that we need to reprioritize. And it is no brainer that we need to reprioritize. I mean, right now we are still operating with the transitional national development plan, which will come into an end March 31st, so that April 1, we start NDP 12. So meaning that we need to go back to the drawing boards to say that how do we reprioritize? Because in any case, remember, your plan is not cast in stone. So you can revise it so that you align it with the physical reality on the ground.
No, very true, very true. But you are right. It's a bit of a, like you said, to be fair to the previous government, they were doing it, going the Keynesian route, saying they are actually mitigating against recession. And the issue is how, obviously what we are not talking about is that it was also election year.
Yes,
which, where politics will also come in. I mean, there's a bit of self-interest there as well, isn't it?
I agree with you. Let me take a safe refuge in the literature. Of course, in public finance literature, they talk about the economics of electoral spending. It's like that they will tell you that public expenditure is very much aligned with the electoral calendar. It's like that when there's an election, public expenditure typically goes up. There is one economist, Peacock, one of the economists that I normally teach to my students, fourth year public finance. Talk about Peacock. He talks about this relationship between public expenditure and elections. So at least in the literature, that has been shown. And then we can, for instance, I can take the statistics from, say, I will exclude 65. Then I can go to, say, 69 all the way to today. And then I can express those pullers in real terms so that I can tell you what was one puller in 69 in today's terms. Then we can map out to see whether there was a spike in public expenditure during an election year. So we have the data. So I can run the data, and then I can tell the reader whether there is any. Because remember that.
Have you done it? I mean, have you done the study? Can you see the pattern, or are you saying it's something that you can do to ascertain?
No, I'm just saying I'm challenging myself to do that.
Okay, good.
Running with Peacock to see. But I can't just focus on 2024.
No, you got to go back.
And of course,
you got to make sure the stats.
Pullers in different times. I would have to express that in real pullers so that I can see. But of course, based on what we know from the literature, yes, there is a possibility that some of the spending could have been due to the electoral calendar. So I'm just safely saying Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Now, coming to the now. The now, we see in the inauguration on Friday. We've talked about the euphoria, but now it's time for priorities, the first 100 days. And I just like to get from you, from your take as an expert, what should be the priorities? And obviously, you can't run away from the connections with the UDC manifesto and what they've already declared or pledged. And we would like you to also comment on the feasibility and the practicality of those things that they have pledged.
Yeah, I think, we are still on the honeymoon. There's euphoria, the elections and everything. It's fine. But Batswana have made that choice. They should be allowed to celebrate. However, the honeymoon has to stop somewhere. And then you get busy. We have just contracted a marriage with UDC. Americans say this is where, the tire, miss, the rubber.
Mr. Rubber.
Yes. Yeah, the tarmac.
It's the tarmac. Yes.
Now, so yes, after inauguration, the real business starts. Like I'm saying, winning an election is one thing. Governing, it's a different ballgame. That's where we now need to translate, those promises, those pledges into something
reality.
Concrete. The job begins there. And typically, new governments say, my first 100 days, this is what we do. I don't know what is magical about 100 years, 100 days.
We're copying from someone.
Yeah, but anyways, so let's say we run
it's
100
priorities,
days.
really. Yeah, the quick wins. Maybe it's the quick win. In project management, we talk about the electorates can see that there is traction.
Yeah, no, true. Yeah. So, but obviously, like I said previously, the economy is critical. We are talking about lives and livelihoods. Yes, we can take democracy and stuff like that, but you see, democracy won't pay my bills.
Yes. Won't bring the table or put the bread on the table.
Hey. So basically, to me, is the economy. Obviously, we need to really get a sense of where we are. What is the state of the fiscals? I mean, let's have an honest conversation to say, where are we? I mean, can you give us our state of health, in a fiscal sense, so that we know what we have? And then obviously, we need to know what are, government priorities. We need a roadmap. We need a blueprint that says to us, short term to medium term, this is what you want to do. Long term, this is what you want to do. So we need that, so that at least we have a compass, so that it's going to show us the true north, as they always say. So that to me is critical. And then obviously we are in a recession. So how do we get ourselves out of this recession? So we need to reset in terms of what we want to do. And then obviously, with diamond not selling right now, and the economy on its knees, it tells us that this whole idea of diversification is yet to materialize. We need to realize it. What are their thoughts around diversification? So we need to be very clear. And like I've always said to my students and the people that I talk to, see, diversification is on two fronts. You diversify away from mining, particularly diamonds. But at the same time, you also need to diversify away from a state-led, economy or development.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a DS on the other hand, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the government is going to crowd out the private sector. So what are you putting on the table to facilitate the private sector? They're talking about jobs. Thousands and thousands of jobs.
450,000 jobs in 5 years. That's quite a BHAG, as we call it.
It's a big ask.
Hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah, it's a big ask.
Yeah.
So, but then of course, government cannot deliver these jobs alone. That's very true. Government cannot grow and develop the economy alone. So it needs partners and collaborators. The private sector becomes very critical. So are we going to see pro-business stroke market policies? To me, that's very critical, because we need to facilitate the private sector. Yes, the government should have a role to play in terms of providing public goods and services, public education. To me, I'm not at a point whereby I'm going to redefine education as a private good. To me, education has always been a public good.
Yeah.
Health, I'm not going to redefine it as a private good. To me, just always been, a public good. Then merit goods, like social security, those we need to have. So those are merit goods. We merit them just because of being citizens. So it's part of the social contract. So we need to see some of these things. So, and then, of course, coming to the 800-pound gorilla, as they always say in America, to say, but then, you can make these pledges, you can politic, you can sloganeer, you can electioneer, all of these things. But of course, but we need to translate this into reality. But of course, to me, you see, all of these asks, they are not free lunches. I'm not aware of any free lunches. Not. You don't need to have done Eco 101 to understand that there are no free lunches. So these are very big and expensive lunches. So, for me as a public finance person, I always ask, so show me the money. Is this a Cuba winning this American actor? There's a movie where he says, show me the money. Show me the money.
Yeah.
So for me, I will say, show me the money. Because you see, they say, put money where your mouth is. At least I know where their mouth is. It's about minimum wage, social security, your tandabala and everything, whatever. They talk about all of these jobs. I see where the mouth is. But then, are we able to put money where the mouth is? So that is the question. And of course, like I said, people have invested so much into this election, so much into this vote. Because remember, I said the voter is a rational voter who is an investor. He or she invested his vote, and he or she is expecting a return on investment very soon. And of course, you want to ask. So that's why I was saying in one of the forums that we need to manage people's expectations.
But Botlhale, let me come here because the pledges are in black and white,
right?
Especially the numbers, like you said, 450,000 jobs in 5 years. Tandavala, living wage 4,000 because basically the social welfare aspect, whatever the bill goes up a little bit compared to what it was before. And importantly, 10% average annual growth rate. Now, I want you to put your on the block and say, this is doable. You are an expert. You know the reality on the ground in terms of the current economy. Do you think it's doable in 5 years?
Let me start with the joke. One of the things that I didn't tell you is that I have a good sense of humor. And when I leave this thankless job of
you're going to be a comedian.
I wanted to try comedy.
We never know. Yes.
But anyways, on a serious note, there is this thing of my Bijo. He asked people to come pay money. It was a Coke bottle. And then he was saying that he was going to get inside that Coke bottle. Took out his shoes and everything.
Coke bottle,
yes. Yeah, he tried to get into the Coke bottle. After so many attempts, he said, "Bara is hopadit. He leaked. So this is the Mabijo joke aside.
Yes,
so
yes.
What I'm saying here is this: that pledges are pledges. They belong into a different phase called politicking, electioneering, sloganeering. Governing is a different matter. Here you need to be dealing with issues of resources to say, do you have resources, to translate those pledges, those promises into reality, into deliverables? That is key. Let me take you to the Bible. Exodus, when Moses left Egypt went to they were going to the promised land. They were in the desert 40 years. They were getting lost. Probably they didn't have a GPS. Yes. So now, at one point,
that's why
yes,
going around in circles.
So anyways, but the most important thing is that at one point they were hungry, thirsty, in the middle of the desert. And then these guys were saying, you know what? We are going back.
Yes,
Pharaoh was a bad ruler, but at least in Egypt we are not starving. We had food, so we are going back. And then of course Moses had to appeal to the men above. You say, hey, I have a problem. I have an insurrection.
I have a problem. Yes,
I have a rebellion.
Yeah.
So God, in His mercy, opened up the skies, manna
from heaven.
From heaven. Everybody was happy. I don't think there was beer, but everybody was happy. Anyways, so. Right. So unfortunately, we don't have those miracles anymore. We don't have manna. We can't summon manna from heaven. We only deal with what we have. And what we have right now is a very constrained revenue envelope.
Correct.
We all know. So meaning that we need now to relate these black and white pledges to what we have. So that's why I'm saying we need to manage people's expectations. Not only that, we need to manage them down. I can put my head on the block to say that, yes, these are very good pledges. We see them, but translating them into deliverables is just going to be a challenge. These things take time. So for those who would have been invested in this thing, they should understand the reality that as much as the new government would want to do 1, 2, 3, and 4, we can't build Rome in one day.
Yeah.
So we need to, first of all, think about revenue generation. See, the only thing, I was joking that I did to say that, if you want to do these things overnight, one thing you have to do is what? Tax us to death.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody
quickest way of raising revenue.
I don't think that is politically feasible. Otherwise, we are going back to 1986, in California. Remember the tax revolt in California. So if government were to do that, it will attract a lot of criticism, angst, and we might have a tax revolt, the one that similar to what happened in California, 86. So what I'm saying is that, yes, I'm not a prophet. I'm not aligned to one or related to one. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can tell you, I'm a realist. And the realism in me says, yes, I see the pledges in black and white, but show me the money. I don't say it. So what is going to happen is to say, yes, this is what we have. So maybe what we should be saying is that we will progressively, gradually run with this. What alarms me, what worries me, is that you can't promise that you will do this thing overnight. In fact, some of the things that the new government will do, they will be able to do it on 5th year, when that time is
coming to an end.
Because you see, short term, medium term, long term, Batswana should understand that
takes a while.
Yeah, economic interventions take time.
So they've got a lag to impact.
It is possible that some of the interventions...
They won't even come during the 5-year period.
Yeah, they'll come later, and by that time, who knows, I might be in power by that time myself and enjoy... I mean, those fruits, interventions.
Yes.
And then I would claim
that is yours. Like exactly. They say, Trump now with the economy not so bad. Yeah. If he wins, he might say, it's me. Not Trump. Yeah.
So I think one of the day, let's be realistic.
No, I got you.
Let's manage our expectations.
I got you.
I'm not a Thomas. I'm not a Jeremiah.
Yeah.
It were to go by biblical. But I'm saying I'm a realist.
Yes.
Thank you.
And there is a lot of introspection, reality check that needs to happen with the government, with the new government, in terms of the realities of the economy, especially.
Of course. I mean, you can't run away from that, and it will not be, a contradiction of terms or something to say. But we had wanted to do
1, 2, 3.
But the state of the economy doesn't allow us to do some of the, all these things. So we will gradually, progressively work on that. And nobody, would say, no, but you promised us this, but now you are telling us a different story. No, it's just that it's the reality. It's just that people should understand that these things are conditional. They are contingent on what we
reality
have.
On the ground.
We don't have manna. We are not Moses. Yeah, we are not.
Are we seeing the end of BDP as a dominant political party in Botswana? Do you think there's a risk that it might fizzle out into non-existence?
Before you come to the BDP, you remember that in Southern Africa particularly, we do have the so-called liberation movements or parties that got us independence. BDP,
it's one of them.
It's one of those. So, it's difficult to tell that this is the end or otherwise. Because you see, talking about history is important. People had written off MCP, Malawi Party, Congress Party. In Malawi, they said of Banda, the late Kamuso Banda. But guess what?
Came back.
It's back. UNIP in Zambia.
Everybody thought it's dead.
Yeah, it's back. So ANC, they are saying it's on its deathbed. We don't know. So from where I'm sitting, obviously having to lose an election after almost 60 years is a shock. But of course, the BDP is licking its wounds as we speak. But you can't lick your wounds forever. Obviously, we expect them. I don't have their script. I don't see their meetings. But I do know that I'm expecting them now to be regrouping. They are now thinking 2029. Yeah, as we speak. Yeah, they won't be mourning forever. They've cried, they've mourned, they've licked their wounds, but it's time to move on. It's time to move on. So for me, I basically want to believe that it is way too early to write that political obituary. Yeah, they are on a comeback. People wrote of Trump.
Here when.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
We all did.
Yeah, but
it is.
Indications, I see red all over. So I don't know how it looked like, but I'm just saying that for now, we can't tell. This question can only be answered in 2029. But I can tell you that as we speak, they are on overdrive. They are saying, how can we reverse these losses? How do we come back? Clinton talked about the comeback kid. During his second term, people had written him off because of a lot of things that happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Clinton was saying, I'm the comeback kid. And he came back for the second term. So
after all those scandals that he had, yes.
He was calling himself the comeback kid. So it is possible that the BDP is saying,
can still come back.
I'm the comeback kid, and they can come back. So definitely they can't just take it on the chin and say, we've lost it and we are picking our bags. We are closing shop. They ain't. We haven't heard the last from them. They are still here. They're still in the game. They might be out, but
not
down.
Yeah.
They're out, but they're not down. So that's what I think.
Cool. The last question, Prof, as we come to an end is, I remember one time when I was studying in the UK in the 90s, I don't know if the book was called Poverty Amongst Many, one of the books that I read. And I was quite surprised. There was a whole chapter on Botswana case study. And the spirit here is that there's always quite an interest globally on the Botswana case study. And I wanted to ask you, from what transpired last week, what are the lessons for Africa, especially? Obviously, we can expand it to the developing world. Do you think there are some, if I don't know, I was going to say Sudan, maybe it's a terrible example. If Malawi or South Africa were to say, come here, what do you think would be the key lessons from this experience that we spent an hour before describing?
Botswana is in the news. And it will continue to be in the news for quite some time. What happened is history changing. I mean, we can't debate that one. It is. So that's why you saw the interest in the internet media. I talked about the CNN and
CNN, the BBC.
Yeah, I was even myself on France 24.
Yes, I saw you there. Yeah.
So what it means is that, yes, you see, this is now a testimony that democracy is alive in Africa. It is alive. It is robust. And that a change of government needs not to be a very complicated thing.
Affair.
Yes. So political scientists and others will be busy. I've just received an offer to work on a chapter on this.
Is it?
As we speak.
That's good. Well
so
done.
It means over this weekend.
You're going to be busy, and other political scientists are more voodoo and others.
You can imagine.
Yes.
So, in fact, some journals are even now thinking of having a special, it's just a special issue on the Botswana elections.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So we are out there. And this is now time for us as researchers and scholars to write the Botswana story.
Yeah.
And this time around, I want this story to be told by us.
Yes, I don't want by others.
I don't want anybody.
From a Western perspective.
No, we want to tell the story. We saw it. I was on the front seat. I saw this story. I want to write.
You also cast the vote. Yes.
Yes, and I'm hoping that other scholars will do the same. And of course, good lessons. And like I said, these lessons can be and should be exported to the so-called developing democracies and also the so-called
developed ones.
Democracies. There's a story, we've made history, and I mean, we have etched our place in the history books, and this is a record that you can't reshuffle. You can't reshuffle it. It's ours. We've backed it, and I want to believe that we can only build on this success and do better, because like I'm saying, we are not 100% correct. I still say let's have a relook at first past the post to really make sure that there's an alignment between the popular vote and the number of seats
in parliament. Yeah.
Also, let's use. I'm not necessarily saying maybe pure
proportional or a hybrid or whatever.
But for me, I think
elements of a hybrid.
If you were to ask me, I would say I want a hybrid. You're a cattle farmer. I'm a cattle farmer. You know that if you take pure Brahman, pure Setswana, the offspring you get, it gets the best genes from both.
Absolutely, yes.
So it's the same. Let's take the best from first past the post, the best from PR, and then have a hybrid. It will deal with issues around representation, gender, youth, people with disabilities, and what have you. So there's a lot that we can do in terms of the electoral process. But what we have, it's a good starting point. We can grow and develop it and mature it. That is my thinking about this thing. And I'm optimistic. My glass is always half full.
Half full, is it?
Yeah, on these issues. I believe that we have a baseline.
Yeah.
So we can build on it.
That's
I remain hopeful that we will. Right.
That's a good place to end. But there's something else that I wanted to not for this discussion, but you can even suggest who's the best. There's something about Batswana in terms of their values that has not been described, unpacked, and packaged and defined. You know, that feeds onto these elections and other things, not just what transpired. But I'm just looking for that social scientist that you and I would talk outside, or who can come, from a historical, right from we talked about the feudal quota system, how we used to have some elements of democracy, even if it wasn't electoral based, to modern day, to say, what is this Botswana and their value system that leads to these sort of, pockets of surprises. I mean, people say, how do we get Litsile? A country is small, all of a sudden, boom, we get a Litsile. We get Mpule 99. We get a Lesotho Chombo. We are a country of surprises. Why are you with me?
Yeah.
We've got these things, and sometimes when I ask people, nobody can tell why. But the day we define who we are is the day we will be able to replicate and multiply who we are, the good sides of things.
I agree with you. But you see, these things like indigenous knowledge, where you have people who, for instance, can divine water, but we have not documented this thing to say,
yes.
I mean, what is the science behind this traditional Sidupi and stuff like that?
Yes.
So you can talk about Botswana's national psyche. We don't understand our psyche as Botswana.
Yeah.
So my sense is that, it would be very interesting to document our psyche. I mean, so that like you're saying, you can't export that which is not documented.
That's documented, yes.
I mean, for this traditional Sidupi summits, we need to document this thing so that we can patent this thing, commercialize all of this.
Package it, yes. Yes.
So my sense is that I don't understand Botswana's psyche. These people who go to the booth, they say nothing. They vote, they leave,
and
they say nothing.
They go and eat. Someone was saying they even go and drink and watch TV, but they just did a revolution.
They say nothing to you, and then you hit in the face to say, these guys are like ninjas. They just get in there and strike, stealth, and that's it.
Yeah.
So we need to understand this psyche.
The psyche.
We need to document it so that for posterity, so that if you can understand where we're coming from. So I believe we should be challenged as scholars, as academics, and other storytellers, because you don't have to be an academic to tell a story.
No, absolutely.
So that we can document this story, so that even myself, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am.
Are we kids?
No,
that's true. That's very true.
It's like the OJs, they said, there's a song called I've Not Been to Me. One of the things that I didn't tell you, I like music.
Oh, you like music?
Oh, yeah, I do. So the OJs say, I've been to the Americas, to the Caribbeans and everything, but I've never been to me.
Oh,
the song is called I've Never Been to Me.
To me, yes.
Yeah, the OJs. Listen to that song.
Yeah.
So I've never been to me. And I think many Botswana have never been to themselves.
Yes.
So we need to embark on a journey of self-discovery to know who we are. So that people don't get surprised that we acted and behaved like ninjas on the third year. Yeah. You know how a ninja acts with these films.
Yeah.
To me it was ninja style.
Ninja style.
It was ninja style. Anyways. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. We also close on a light note.
Right.
So I'd just like you to share with the viewers in terms of some of the books that have influenced your life that you would like to share with whether one or two books that really stand out. Like the OJ's thing that that song keeps coming into you. Are there any books that and a lot of young people really enjoy this session where they say, the books, I've checked that book out. So which ones would you that have influenced your life thus far?
Lanta. I should just say, of course, my favorite book is the Bible.
The Bible. Yes.
No, my name is Emmanuel.
Emmanuel.
Yeah, so Jesus.
Emmanuel.
Yeah, so Jesus is my namesake.
Beautiful.
I always make that joke.
Beautiful.
But on a serious note, of course, outside the Bible, I read extensively. I mean, principally, I do public finance, but I work with many people, political scientists, lawyers, and whatever. I read extensively. One of the books that I read, political strategy, and all these things, Machiavelli. The Prince.
The Prince.
Yeah, this is one book that, I read it.
Machiavelli.
Almost all the time. The Art of War. Sun Tzu.
Art of War, Sun Tzu, yeah.
It's a book that I
haven't read it,
read.
but I've had snapshots of The Prince, but I haven't actually read. You think it's a worth reading? It's a powerful book.
It is. Of course, some could be cynical to say.
Yeah, in terms of his stance.
What was Machiavelli saying? And I think
manipulation,
I was
especially
reading,
the aspect of manipulation.
I was reading one review that was saying that people don't understand Machiavelli. Machiavelli, but they all agree that he went to hell. He didn't go to heaven because of what he wrote.
In
The Prince.
Yeah.
It's a small, short book.
Okay.
But it's rich with content.
Okay.
I read it, and just from that book, of course, what Machiavelli says, it might shock you. It might shock the conscience.
It does.
Yeah. It's like it is preaching political thuggery or skullduggery.
Fascists,
or whatever. But on the day, there's the good you can pick from The Prince, The Art of War. Sun Tzu is very good. It just tells about strategy, because on the day, everything that we do in life is about strategy.
Yeah.
Everything, whatever you do, think strategically. So those are the two books that I will commend. But of course, the first I would commend is the Bible.
Okay.
Thank you.
Beautiful. A lot of good stuff there, Prof. And thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I really enjoyed this. Thank you very much. And I hope you did. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This is my first podcast. But
you did wonderful.
I believe I didn't have butterflies in my stomach. I've done public speaking, but not on this
podcast basis.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you very
it was
much.
just an easy, laid-back conversation.
Absolutely.
And you saw that I also have a sense of humor.
I didn't expect that. You surprised me,
After
bro.
the classroom, I'm going to take up our comedy.
Cool.
On a serious note. Yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you very much,
Thank you.
very much. Viewers, there we go. Very insightful. I really enjoyed this. And Prof, his first podcast, so you can also do your thumbs up there. So thank you very much. You know what to do. Do that subscribe, that share, that like, and we're on our way. Thank you very much.